How's it going, guys? Josh here, aka Olufemii. Sometimes I just go out and create something for fun. I just created this dope video with my friend IMD. Check it out.
And keep your love for the champion, you the champ. I swear to God, man, you the champion, you the champ. I swear to God, in here, you the champ. And you the moose, now I got champion, you the champ. And you the man, you the champion, you the champ. I swear to God, man, you the champion, you the champ. I swear to God, in here, you the champ. And you the moose, now I got champion, you the champ. And you the man.
I made this video in After Effects using a lot of masks, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how I did it. Before we start the tutorial, guys, if you love this channel, please support me. Check out my website luxuryleaks.com. I have a new lens distortion product called the Femi filter, and while you're at it, you can sign up for Envato Elements using my link below. This is something that I call the Netflix of video production. Check it out. It's incredible. How's it going, guys? I'm going to show you how to do this really cool masking trick. We shot in 4K and we had the talent wrap and do the same movements in the exact same way at each location. First thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to make proxies out of each of these clips. Set your proxy resolution to 320/180. The cool thing about proxies is they don't need to actually look good. You just need to have a basic understanding of what the footage looks like so that we can do our masking and VFX stuff in peace without having to worry about the computer slowing down. So let's export that out. We're then going to go and do the same thing for clip number 2. This is a 4K clip, and we're going to create a proxy for clip number 2. Perfect. So we've created proxies out of all of these 4K clips. They're still stored away on our computer. We're not going to bring them in yet. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to right click. We're going to highlight all of these 4K clips and the music track, and we're going to right click and go to replace with After Effects composition. And that's going to bring us into After Effects. We are now in After Effects, and next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually create pre-comps out of all of these individual clips. Pre-compose, make sure that it's on, move all attributes to the new composition clicked. Perfect. Now you may be wondering, why did we just do that? Well, the reason is we're going to want to actually bring in our proxies in, and you're going to actually realize why very soon. So let's import all of our proxies that we just made, proxy 1 all the way to proxy 4. And then let's do a little bit of housekeeping before we move on. Let's create a new folder for those proxies called proxies. Cool. So the comp that was automatically made when we put all these clips into Premiere is this one, Quadrap example linked comp 02. That's a weird, confusing name. I want to make that simpler. Let's name this base comp for no reason except this is kind of the initial comp that we're gonna put everything into. All these comps that are basically containers of our 4K clips were automatically created. These names. After Effects almost automatically created these names for these comps or pre-comps. So 1.mp4 comp 1 is the comp that has our 4K clip 1, and so on. The question then is, why did we create these pre-comps? Why did we pre-comp all these clips inside their own comps? Well, the reason is I want an easy way to click on and off the proxies. So we have our proxies. I want to now put into this initial comp proxy 1 over the first 4K clip that's called 1. So as you can see, it's kind of small. The proxy is actually really small because, as you remember, we had it in such a low resolution. That resolution, I happen to know, is 6 times less than the resolution of the sequence. The sequence in After Effects is just full HD, so 1920. So I'm going to go to scale, and I'm going to scale this up to 600. So all you have to remember is scale up to 600, and you should have a, your footage should completely cover the 4K footage. So this is the proxy footage. It's a very low res. Right on the top is the 4K footage. So we're going to turn on the proxy, and we're going to turn off the 4K footage. And we're going to do the same thing for each of these other comps. All right, let's turn off all of the 4K clips for now. We don't need to use those until we're done masking. Don't worry, we'll get back to turning them on later. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the audio for all these clips, because when you have the audio on in After Effects, it just slows things down further, and we don't really have to worry about the audio within any of these comps. Okay, cool. So we can, for now, close all these comps. We're back in base comp. That's the comp that has all of these comps within it. Cool. And now we're just dealing with proxies. And whenever we want to go back to using the 4K clips, it's actually really easy. All we got to do is go into any of these compositions, turn off the proxy, and turn on the 4K clip. And it's that simple. Next thing we do is pretty easy. We just create a bunch of masks. And then we animate them. So I just created a mask by clicking on the rectangle tool. I just used rectangle masks for this video. So then you can go to mask path and animate it any way that you like. And the biggest thing, guys, is you want to make sure that as you mask over, that the clips behind what you're masking has Tom in a similar position. That should be the case for the most part, because I tried my best to make sure that he did the exact same movements at the exact same part of the song for every take, regardless of the location. All right, guys, that's all I'm going to do for now. You can kind of see the basic idea. For the actual video, I did a ton more masks, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to leave it at this. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to pre-compose all of these layers again. Why would we do that? Make sure that it's on move all attributes to new composition. The reason why we want to do that is we want to add a few more effects just to make this a little bit more interesting. First thing I want to do is I want to add an effect called optics compensation. We're going to click on reverse lens distortion, and we're going to then change the field of view. There we go. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to keyframe the movement a little bit. Camera. So what we're going to do then is we're going to actually add movement back in post. And the cool thing is we shot 4K. So when we zoom in, as long as we don't do it too much, we won't be able to notice the change of resolution too much. So you will be able to know it now because we're using proxies. But as you know, we're going to turn the proxies off and turn our 4K clips on, at the end of this tutorial. So don't worry about that quite yet. Okay, cool, perfect. So we're gonna right click here. We're gonna highlight all of these keyframes again, and then we're gonna actually go to keyframe assistant, or keyframe interpolation, sorry. We're gonna change this to Bezier. There we go. It's gonna, give a little bit of bounce. It can give a little bit of a smooth transition instead of a hard linear one. One other thing I want to do to make the transition even smoother, or the zoom even smoother, or the scaling even smoother, excuse me, is I'm going to go into our graph editor. Basically what I'm doing here in the graph editor is I'm just easing the transition so that it starts off really fast and then it ends very, very slow. I'm just adjusting the edges so that instead of it being somewhat like this, it's actually taking a lot more time to get to this ending point than it would usually. So it's going to start really fast and then it's going to end very, very slow right there. The graph editor can be a little bit confusing. There are tons of tutorials that go a little bit more in depth. Try to just copy me as perfectly as you can, and if you understand it perfectly, you can then adjust it even more according to your own preferences. But there's one last thing I want to do, just for the sake of it. I want to add an expression. I want to add a wiggle, and that's going to just give us a little bit of this handheld wiggle look. It's not quite handheld, but for the sake of things, it'll work. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into animation. We're going to go, or first actually, let's go into transform, position. Just click, make sure that's highlighted, then go to animation, go to add expression, and we're going to type in wiggle. If you've never used wiggle before, well, welcome to the world of expressions. It's relatively easy to use. You're going to type wiggle, and then open parentheses. The first number will be how often the footage shakes per second. So we're going to try 10 first. And then the second number is going to be the amount of pixel movement. We're going to try 5. We're probably going to change it up later, but I just want to see what it does so far. Okay, you have a little bit of shake. it kind of looks like handheld shake. You get the idea of what it's doing. You can then adjust that to your liking. If you ever see black edges like this, sometimes it means that you're wiggling it too much, that you're actually wiggling the footage outside of the edges of the actual footage. You can either adjust that by just adjusting the scale and scaling in a tiny bit. You have to make sure you scale in each one of these keyframes. Or what I like to do is you can just throw in a motion tile effect on this. Change the output width to say 300, or heck, let's do 200. This will basically tile the footage so that it just duplicates it. And then you're gonna go to mirror edges and then bye-bye black edges. It's pretty perfect. Okay guys, and lastly, we're going to now go back and finally turn off our proxies now that we know that everything is set, everything is perfect. Now the last thing you got to do is just export. We're gonna go back into Premiere to do that, but I want to just show you and make sure that you actually understand that we're actually dealing with a 1920 by 1080 sequence in After Effects. So that means that your proxies had to be multiplied by 6 in order to fill the frame, and your 4K footage actually had to be reduced by 50% in order to fill the frame. Just random facts, thought it might be useful to know. Everything is perfect though, and because what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back to Premiere, and in Premiere we as well have a sequence that is 1920 by 1080. So you can see right here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to actually export out 1920 by 1080 out of Premiere. We're going to call this wrap. We're going to do save, and then we're going to export, and that's it guys. Thank you so much for watching guys. This is actually not as hard as you would think to actually do. The hardest part is actually just making sure that your talent is actually wrapping, doing the exact same movements in every single shot at the same time. So one thing that you want to do, one thing that I did was I made sure that he kind of locked his legs in one place. It made it a lot easier to make sure they were always going to be in the same place in every shot. And so all he had to do was make sure that his upper body was doing the exact same thing in the exact same place and time for every shot, so that every shot aligned perfectly. Thank you so much for watching guys, and as always, keep it chill.